Hello, people. Welcome to another episode of the Right Way podcast. Today, I'm joined by big Billy Stella. Is it Billy Stella or Billy Nicky Stella?
Billy Stella. Nicky's just the middle name.
Oh, okay. Banging. How you doing, mate?
I'm good, my man. How are you?
I'm all good, mate. Had a very productive morning. Just sipping on this new Red Bull. Spiced pear. Bit of a rogue choice, but what are you going for? Is that the drinks?
Orange whimsical rain.
Can't go wrong with that.
Old favourite.
Yeah. To get started, mate, if you just want to do an introduction to the people, let them know who you are, kind of what you've been doing recently,
Yeah,
and we'll go from there.
yeah, man. So full-time online coach, as is everyone nowadays. Um, Alongside that, amateur bodybuilder, I guess can call yourself an amateur bodybuilder now, having done or complete my first amateur season.
Mm.
Um, Racked up a few shows this year, had a good crack at it, enjoyed it. And that's where we're at, my man. That's where we're at.
Good stuff. First thing I want to touch on there, you said full-time online coach now. I
Yes, mate.
remember when I first started following you, I can't remember exactly. Were you like a project manager or like on a
Quantity surveyor.
yeah. So how did you balance bodybuilding with kind of doing that? Because I imagine it's very kind of hectic trying to do that.
Now, I don't want to say that it's hard,
Hmm.
um, because it's not hard. It comes down to, and this all sounds really kind of blasé or cliche, but
How
it's
much
like
you want
how much you enjoy it, mate. How much you enjoy it. If you enjoy it that much, you'll make it work.
it?
Not so much how much you want it. It's if you can't function without it, you can't. And I can't function without it. Like my routine towards bodybuilding, it keeps me going. It keeps me ticking. Um, if you really want to, succeed at something, and it does bring you that sense of fulfillment, you'll stay up till 11 midnight prepping your meals after a day of work and training and checking people in and doing your coaching work on the side. You'll do it, no questions asked. If you don't want to do it, you'll find all the reasons in the world to not. And truth be told, mate, whilst I was surveying, it was fucking easy. Like it's easy. If you want to do it, you can. Don't get me wrong, there comes a point when, as you advance as a bodybuilder and you progress, that balance of being able to sustain, a 9 to 5 if you're employed and be a really fucking good bodybuilder, there comes a point where you're going to come at loggerheads. You're either going to have to bias your progress within your 9 to 5, or you're going to have to look at something else that's going to allow you to progress a little bit more. But that's not to say you can't make ample and fucking fantastic progression working on a standard 9 to 5. I just,
100%.
in terms of like the autonomy that you have in terms of managing your own routine on a daily basis, spreading your workload throughout the week to suit your bodybuilding endeavors, which is a massive luxury. But yeah.
And what you talked about there with, like leaving a job when you couldn't like you kind of want to commit to bodybuilding more. Was that kind of your situation, or was it just a point where your coaching got to a point where, you could sustain yourself essentially and kind of obviously that's where you want to go because,
Yeah.
you're doing
So
bodybuilding.
my decision to pull away from, I hate saying 9 to 5, but I'll just say employment, was purely because my heart and my passion lies within coaching.
Mm.
It had nothing to do with chasing my bodybuilding endeavors. It's just that's a cool byproduct of being your own manager, your own boss, if you like, regardless of whether I was coaching or whether I was self-employed working on the tools, whatever it may be. The same thing, I would still be able to manage it pretty similarly, right? But my bread and butter, my get up and go every morning was, I can't wait to do my check-ins once I've finished my 9 to 5 today. I can't wait to catch up with the boys and girls that I'm working with. And when you spend 9, 10 hours doing something that really doesn't like that fucking spark or that fire deep down in your fucking gonads,
Mm.
you there comes a point where you sit there and you end up kind of like resenting a large majority of your day because you're just watching the clock go by. You're just watching the clock go by, and it's like, what am I doing, man? I've got to do what I need to do in order to do what I want to do. And that was
Mhm.
it. That was it, man.
And kind of spanning off of that, I always kind of ask a few similar questions, but like, how did your kind of introduction to bodybuilding start?
Mm.
Also, what the hell are you drinking?
Oh, my mad
Water,
fucking.
bro.
I've got every supplement known to man in here.
Oh, bro, drinking dirty bath water.
we're actually all right because about well, all the products are strong, so they're flavored all right, but it just looks like it's come out of man's arse. Uh, what was the question there again?
So like how you initially kind of got into
Oh,
bodybuilding.
yeah. So my background from a really young age, like I've always been into sports, been a sporty child and whatnot. But throughout like my young teens, my teens, my colts, my background was rugby to like really a fairly decent level. Everyone says that as well. Like,
Mm.
until I picked up the injury,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
yeah,
it's a very common route.
yeah. Yeah, the background was rugby to a relatively decent degree, like county level, academy level. And my introduction to training, like weight training specifically, not bodybuilding, but just being in a gym, was the strength and conditioning training that was was part and parcel of the academy setup that I was in as a teenager.
Mhm.
And I remember, mate, going to these strength and conditioning sessions, and I was obviously like genetically, I'm small, I'm short, I'm skinny. Like if I didn't train and I didn't do what I do, I'd be skinny. So thank God for test and maths, otherwise man would be. Um, yeah, I remember going into the strength and conditioning sessions and just being the kid that was like, I'm well out of my depth here, man. There are big boys in here. There are strong boys. I would go into the strength and conditioning sessions and just do things that I was like tucked away in the corner of the gym, away from everyone, not having to worry about like 1 rep maxes and all the other shit. And then there come a point where just natural kind of progression, I started to lose the fire that rugby was bringing me.
Mhm.
I think I'd just been doing it for a long time, and it just kind of taken the enjoyment away from it. Like not pressure, like I was never pressured by parents or anything like that, but I just started to not really enjoy it as much. I enjoyed the training, but when it come to like the 80 minutes of playing a match, man, my anxiety used to go sky high, and I just used to fucking resent that shit. Um, so when I was probably around 17, 18, I've kind of pulled back from playing and then just threw myself um into the gym, because I had in my head, I was like, right, I had enough of the years of being the smallest person on the rugby pitch, being the smallest person in the changing rooms, and I fucking hated how I looked as well, man. I had no confidence in my physique. I was the person that, like, I would go on holiday with my family and it would be like 40 degrees and I'd be in the swimming pool with a t-shirt on.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. Same as
I
me.
was that kind of guy, man. I had no body confidence. I wouldn't walk around my house without my top on. Like I just had no confidence in it at all. Um, but what was weird was like I was still a fairly confident person, like fairly outgoing. But when it come to like my body, my physique, you would never see me without. Even now, though, to be fair, you don't see me without fucking 12 layers on.
Mm.
But back then, I would hate taking my top off. So completely threw myself into training, into the gym. Had absolutely no idea what I was doing, because there weren't really much in terms of information about then, unless you was kind of deep diving into the forums back in the day, like the DC forums and whatnot. But it was mainly like YouTube, like Callum von Moga time, and just I was training 7 days a week. And honestly, mate, I'd love to have been a fly on the wall just to see like what my training was like.
Mm.
Trained hard, but had no fucking structure with anything.
Mm.
Um, and then I can't remember the year exactly, but my first coach was someone called Calvin Gowland. I don't know if you've heard of him, CRG Fitness on Instagram.
No, I haven't.
And he used to, and I knew Calvin because I followed Cougar at the time, and this was back in the day when Cougar kind of just started creeping up, and he wasn't really like famous or anything, famous like Insta famous.
Established in
You know
Inch.
what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah. So Calvin was coached by Kuba, and I liked kind of the approach that Calvin trained hard. He was in much better shape than me. He was competing at the time. So I worked with Calvin for a bit, and I was kind of getting like what was cool because I was kind of getting like the recycled information filtering down from Kuba into Calvin, and I was getting that kind of gist from like the nutrition, the training, things like that. Still natural at that time as well, man. Um, and then I probably was working with Calvin for about 2 years, and I said like I had no ambitions of competing. I just wanted to grow some muscle, man. And about 2 years in, I was like, I think I want to do a shot. I like the idea of competing, mate. He was like, let's go for it. And I didn't. I ended up stopping working with Calvin because at that point is when we went into the first lockdown with COVID around about that time, right?
Oh, bad. Yeah.
So I stopped working with Calvin. I obviously stopped training because I didn't have the luxury of having equipment. I went complete like CrossFit hybrid athlete mode, which I think everyone did in that time. It was like fucking bike rides. I was doing
Everyone's doing runs in their Air Force,
hit
getting
work.
kids
Yeah. And to be fair, man, like I probably got in my best shape back then around that time in terms of like just general competition, how I felt. I felt fucking fantastic. I was eating what I wanted to, being really, really mindful of things, but there was no stress on any of it. And then towards the back end of the first lockdown, I reached out to Josh McHale.
Okay.
CJM, Josh McHale. No, you don't know Josh McHale? No. Oh, fair play.
Terrible.
And worked with Josh for fucking ages and ended up doing my first competition with Josh back in 2021.
I think that's when I started following you around
Yeah,
that
it's been
time.
around the time that Taylor was doing his prep as well. So I think
Yeah.
you were working with Taylor around that time more.
Yeah, because I was working with Taylor and I think I first saw you because you came second to Taylor in that show, right?
So I won my class, but then in the overall,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I don't know where I come in the overall, but I'm saying I come second.
Mm.
I'll tell everyone I come second.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, man. So 2021, then decided to pull away from Josh for a little bit just to kind of grow my experience as both an athlete and a coach. And I worked with Tom Hames, Evolution Coaching, for a
Yeah.
period of
Yeah.
time.
No, Tom.
That was my kind of off season. I probably made that was kind of the first time I actually capitalized massively on like an off season in terms of like food escalations, drug escalations, all of it like that, and made some really good progress there. And then it sounds like I'm a massive fucking like coach hopping whore. And then so I'd done a good stint with Tom, and just the relationship between me and Tom wasn't what I wanted. Just from how we clicked, we're just quite different people. And I've been mates with Dan Bastick for a long period of time, who is another coach, and been working with Dan since, oh God, I'm looking at Beth as if she's going to prompt me right now, but probably I'll say like maybe I'm going to say November last year, maybe I don't know, around about that time. So I finished up my off season with Dan and then went straight into prep this year, which was pretty successful, man. That's where we are. So that's the longest answer you've ever had to that
Oh,
question.
it's nice. Like I like it when people go into detail because I like
Yeah,
people to get like an understanding for the individual.
yeah,
What you said there about like coach hopping, like
yeah.
I think there's two ways you look at it. There's going to be like one side of the coin where it's just like, you should stay with a coach, establish a relationship, build up that rapport, especially for when you're going for a prep. But I think very similar. I'm kind of from the same background with that because I want to say including Max now. Tom Taylor, Christian, Matt. I swear there's another one in there. I think I've had like 4 or 5 coaches, but like I definitely think getting an understanding from different coaches and how they manage things, especially if you're like your own coach and you're wanting to learn, it is very good as well. And I sometimes find, especially if you've been coached by the same person for a long time, when you start coaching, you're very kind of set in your ways, if you know what I mean.
Like that saying where it's like what is it like, you are who you surround yourself with, right, to a degree. And if you are being coached in a certain manner, a certain type of way, as human beings, it's only natural that we're going to pick up those kind of tendencies with our own, approach to coaching, as for the most part, whether that's, specific approaches to training or specific approaches to how you talk and deliver check-in feedback, whatever it may be. But for me, I think it's kind of like like you touched on, it's a two-pronged approach, right? You got the aspect of, right, as an athlete, what's going to work best for me? If I know that I'm making progress with this coach, is it going to be in my best interest to probably pull away right now? But when you're looking at the progress that you're making, you've got to take into consideration as well, like your maturity and your age as an athlete, not as a person, but as an athlete, as a bodybuilder, as someone who has been doing this for X amount of time. If you're like in your first 2 to 3 years, like, yeah, fucking stick with a coach and just fucking rinse it for all you can, in my opinion. But then on the other side of that, like, if you are like us, coaches, who you want, your biggest asset in this game is your knowledge base and the experience that you can rack up. And everyone's going to have different approaches, different biases to how they coach, right? Whether that's the emotional side, whether that's the practical application of things. But for the most part, and this is something I've found, is that things are pretty much the same. Like, drugs are going to be the same. Training's going to be the same. People are going to say, let's find how you like to train. And you know how you like to train. For me, the main thing that is probably the most important when working with a coach is that emotional side, is how you can actually how you click with them. Like me as a bodybuilder, as an athlete, like, I have a wicked setup with Dan, like, to the point where it's like, mate, I don't need a fucking Loom video telling me that we're going to adjust this and adjust that. Send it on a text, because the value's still the same. I don't need you to pull up my sheets and go, oh, okay, this trend is doing that, so for this reason I'm going to do that. I just want to know what you're changing, why you're changing it. Send it to me on a text and I can crack on, because I know that works in his favor. It works in my favor. I don't really have the time to sit down and watch a fucking 8-10 minute Loom video. Do you know what I mean? I don't want to. But for me, like, yeah, it's how I gel with that person, like, them as a person, their values, their investment in me as well. Like, I think that's something I've found in the past with, like, previous coaches, is that you do just become somewhat of a number, and it's very evident to tell that. Which, as soon as I get a whiff of that, like, I'm gone, mate. I ain't fucking sticking around. Like, and that's something I'll say to anyone that's watching this, and even yourself, mate. It's like, remember, at the end of the day, you are paying for a service. In no other area of your life are you going to pay someone for goods, for a product, for a service. And if you're not happy with it, like, if you go to your barber, a barber, and you pay, I don't know, 30-40 quid for a haircut, and you walk out and you go, what the fuck has this bastard done? He's absolutely obliterated.
He's going to show me the back of my head, and I'll still be like, "Yeah, it's good, mate. Thanks." Yeah,
You
cheers.
come out and you've actually got the Billy Stella there. But you're not going to go back. You're not going to go back. You're not going to go back to that barber, right? You're going to go and look for another barber. But people, I think it's a little bit different with coaching. People feel as though they owe the coach a little bit more, which maybe sometimes that falls on the coach's part, and they're doing their best to try and retain clients. But you've got to remember, at the end of the day, if you're not liking what you're doing, it's not bringing you fulfillment, you're feeling like just a number and a tick on the box and a fucking Loom video sent out, then there are plenty of coaches out there that do genuinely care, man, and are actually invested. So
I think it's quite easy to tell the difference between coaches who are in it just kind of for the financial gain, or for the gain of just like, oh, this is another, trophy or medal for me, so I can get more clients, compared to someone who's actually going to sit down with you. Like Max, for example, is like one of those coaches where, I was saying this on the last one with Anna, which we did last week, how for me at this point, I feel like very early on, I needed, especially when you start off, you need that accountability, you need that kind of level. But now it's more of like, I might be too hard on myself, or I'm overdoing something, and I need that person to kind of tell me to kind of pull back. And it's kind of like almost having a therapist in a way for me. But Yeah, I think like it's weird when you still see people like waiting like 2 days for a check-in or like a response for their coach, and you're like you're paying them how much a month and they can't text you back. Like it's wild to me. I
Yeah,
just
I've
don't
got
understand.
some horror stories of check-ins like that, but we'll save that for when we're not recording because I don't want to
Yeah,
out it.
yeah. So in terms of your season that you've just had with Dan, how many shows did you? Was it? I know you won one of the shows. I'm terrible with like following everyone, so I don't want to say like how many you won.
So it's 3 shows total this year.
Yeah, how many did you? How did you place in each one?
So the first show I only competed with PCA this year.
Mhm.
We didn't plan to do two bros just because I wanted to like. At the minute, I'm not going to say at the caliber for two bros, but I like PCA. I like how it's ran. My physique at the moment suits the PCA criteria and what they look for in bodybuilders a little bit better.
Mhm.
So the plan was to always do the PCA route this year, and it wasn't until halfway through the season or towards the back end of my season at least, we kind of sat there and was like, we see the standard, see the caliber at some of the two bro shows, and we was like, oh, we should have maybe dabbled a little bit in a two bro show, but just
Mhm.
hindsight's always a killer, right? So this year was PCA. First show was September the 10th, something like that, which was the PCA Midlands in Birmingham, which was weird because it was the same date, the same show, the same venue that I'd done my first competition at in 2021. So it's like the first time I'd competed as an amateur, not a first timer, was like we stayed in the same hotel. We was competing at the same venue. It was like massive kind of like nostalgia type thing.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the PCA Midlands was the first where I compete in. For people that don't know, like PCA have short, medium, and tall bodybuilding classes. I fall into medium, like only just because man is short as hell. So it's men's medium. The Midlands, I took the class win, and then was fortunate enough to take the overall at that show as well, which was quite cool because I had it in my head that I wanted to go back to Birmingham and I wanted to win the fucking overall because I didn't win it back in 2021 because of that Scottish bastard. And then the second show was the PCA London, which was 2 weeks later, which I took the class win again in medium bodybuilding and missed out on the overall, which don't really want to go into it too much because it's pretty fucking irrelevant. But I feel like the overall on that was kind of like not not unfairly, but kind of misjudged.
Mhm.
Um, like kind of like if I hadn't have won the overall 2 weeks prior, I would have won the overall there as well, type
Mhm.
thing. But the guy who won the overall there was a classic guy, and he was fucking great, man. He was really had a really cool physique. So yeah, London show. So that was class win overall at Midlands, then the class win missed out on the overall at the London, and then 4 weeks later done the British, which I never really intended. Like it wasn't my plan from the offset to be like start the season. Oh, that's my goal. I'm going to the British. I'm competing at the British. It was like every show just taken for what it is at that time. And it was quite hard, kind of, because your first show of the season, if you've won your class and you've won the overall, you kind of set yourself up for like where'd you go from there for the rest of the season. And it's a really hard kind of ceiling standard to kind of maintain because it's fucking unrealistic if you think you're going to go to every show and take the class win and an overall every time. But if you've done that for your first showing of the year, you put pressure on yourself because it's like, right, that's the bare minimum now. Anything less than that is like an L, even though it's not, because this
Yeah.
is bodybuilding. Um, so yeah, we decided to go to the British. When I walked off the stage at London, I was like, oh, because of how the overall was judged, and that was my best, not my best look of the season actually, but my look was much more improved from the Midlands show as well, which was why it was a bit of pill to swallow because I
Mhm.
bought a much better package. The peak was now to a T. So when I walked off the stage, I was like, right, like prep's done. Was devouring fucking cookies and brownies galore, mate. And then the next day, me and Beth I had the day off in terms of like structure with plan and whatnot, and we just had like a day of fucking just doing
Yeah.
life.
Mm-hmm.
I went out and had some really good food, and then it's kind of like halfway through the day, we was driving home after having some food, and I was like, just thinking to myself, I was like, why? It's only 4 weeks. Why would I not do the British for an experience, man? And I said to Beth, bearing in mind at this point, me and Beth had fucking celebrated the end of prep. We're
Yeah.
like, oh, thank God, I've been waiting for this. She's got
Mm-hmm.
my card, like, she wrote me a card. She got me like a care package with like all treats in. And we was like, yeah, wicked, gonna go do this, go do that now. And then as we were in the car driving back on the way home, I said to her, like, you're gonna hate me. And she was probably waiting for me. She was probably waiting for me to say something like, I've done something fucking terrible. Like, I don't know, like shave my hair off. And I said, I think I want to do the British. And she was like, let's fucking do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I text Dan there and then whilst I was in the car, and I was like, I want to do the fucking British, mate. Um, and he texted me back and he was like, Bill, I'm not fucking talking to you about bodybuilding today. You need to give Beth at least 24 hours, like, fuck off. And I
That's good
replied,
from Dan though. Like
yeah,
nothing against
he
the
knows
guy.
what I think like, and he knows, like, it's man management, right?
Mm.
um and I replied back to him and was like, um okay, but I've already booked my accommodation and bought my registered for the show.
Yeah,
uh,
burn the boat.
and he replied laughing and was like, he was like, if you're good, we'll think about it, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
Mm.
And then we just carried on prepping for 4 weeks, which was hard, man. It was harder than I anticipated. From like a psychological standpoint, when 24 hours prior, you've had this big kind of drop in cortisol, drop in stress, like, oh, prep's done, like, I'm reversed back into my off season. I'm going on holiday in 6 weeks, to then go, right, now I've actually got to up the ante again. To pick yourself up was harder than I anticipated, but still doable. Then went into the British, which was definitely my best look of the season, which is why this one hurt. Not hurt, but it hurt more than the London,
Mm.
because I think I was just like massively overlooked, man.
Mm.
So I ended up coming sixth out of a class of 9 out of nine. Which, like, for anyone to say, like, my first ever amateur season, I've come sixth in Britain, like, you'd take that. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But
You have very
when,
high expectations of yourself.
yeah, I think it just stems from like the competitive, like the athlete background, man. It's like, and it's something that I've tried pulling away from a lot, but it's like anything less than first place is an L.
Yeah.
And if you think like that with bodybuilding, I've been having this conversation a lot with people recently, actually. But if you have that mindset with bodybuilding, you're going to have a very miserable and a very short-lived competitive career, and
Yeah.
you're probably doing it for the wrong reasons. Especially at this level as well, like this standard. I think, yeah, we know that we've probably got, or me personally, I've got a decent opportunity to be a relatively good amateur level bodybuilder. But we always seem to have, like, the pinnacle is like, that means I have to win absolutely everything.
Mm.
Which is just fucking unrealistic, man.
Yeah.
And do you know what? The weekend, the show day of the British was probably or actually no, but Midlands was wicked, but the British was just like zero pressure, zero expectations, just fucking absolutely enjoy the weekend with everyone there. PCA put on a wicked show as well, man. They really, really do. So yeah, come sit for the British, and that's where we're at, mate. That's where we're at.
Mm. Leading on from what you said about like going into it with the expectations, for anyone listening, the episode we did with Tom Taylor, listen to that if you're kind of struggling with that. Because I mean, like you said, mate, I think anyone within this sport has, especially if you've come from an athlete background, it's so easy to get kind of tied up in the mindset. Whereas, if you don't win, what's the point, kind of thing. But you've got to, remember at the end of the day, you want to do it because you love bodybuilding, you want to do it because you love the process. And if you just focus on that end goal constantly, showing up every day becomes a chore. And then you resent yourself, your mental health goes in the bin. And you know, even though I didn't compete, like I haven't competed yet, I think a reason why kind of early on in my kind of bodybuilding journey, I kind of struggled a lot with my mental was because I was just always focused on that end goal. And there is a bigger picture to it, and like I'm sure, especially going from such the high of the PCA to the two bros, it's got to be hard because obviously you've been here and then you've come down here. But then again, you've got to remember, it's judged differently. You never know who's going to turn up on the day. There's so many factors outside of your control. And, if you just put all that pressure on yourself, you're just going to break down and there's no way you're going to be able to kind of keep on this journey. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it's something like this prep in comparison to 2021. It's multifaceted really, because like it's not just how well I personally have handled it. It's just like natural progressions as an athlete, as maturing as a person, as a partner, as a son, as a friend. Like you're gonna get better at handling those things like naturally anyway. But this year in like the preps from 2021 to this year, I like non-comparable. My 2021 prep, for a good majority of it, like 40-50%, was fucking miserable, man. It was really fucking hard. Um, but I absolutely loved every second of it at the same time. But it was just very hard. It was hard not only for myself, but I didn't make enough of an effort to make it as enjoyable an experience for those that are close to me.
while we're on this topic, just because I did want to ask you this, how like with Beth, I'm assuming she doesn't bodybuild at all. No, she's like completely outside of
She,
that.
she, she trains, she goes to the gym, like, but she's not a bodybuilder at all, mate. She's like, nah, no interest in that.
Because I was going to say, from Instagram, like you guys seem like you have a great relationship, and I think a lot of people going into it, kind of, especially within bodybuilding, kind of go down the road of like their partner is a bodybuilder. So how did you kind of like help manage your relationship throughout the prep as it kind of got harder on yourself to be like inclusive for her and you know
So it sounds really like when I say some of these things, you're gonna think like, oh God, like sounds really, really small, but it's like even down to like I try my absolute best to make sure that, because it's like when you're in a diet phase, like your meal timings go a little bit askew, and my sleep routine was very, very different to what it would be normally in like in my off season, for example. So I'll be ready to fall asleep at like 8:30, 8 o'clock, whereas like normally we wouldn't be going to bed till like 10, 10:30 or something like that, right? So I had normal dinner time, like when we'd eat our last meal together in like the off season, would be like 9, 9:30, like relatively late. Whereas in prep, like I'm finished and ready to go to sleep. My meals are finished by like 7:30 latest. I'm ready to go to sleep. Like I'm up at stupid o'clock. So like a big thing for me was like making sure that I saved my last meal of the day so that I can sit down with Beth at the dinner table and eat. Like my meal, my tiny peasant meal of like fucking 200 grams of chicken and air, it would take me like not even 5 minutes to eat. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah.
the fact that we're able to sit down and try and keep that level of normality is really important. Making an effort to like, I enjoy cooking, so I was still like making an effort to cook Beth like lunch, dinner, for example, going out for coffee. And even then, it's like I don't know if you'd seen on my story, but it was something we was doing like the beginning of prep. We didn't really do it towards the end, but do you see any of like the pastries that Beth was eating, like the cakes or anything that were going up on my story when we was going
I,
out?
I don't think so. No.
Just like making an effort with little things like that. Like we go out and have a coffee and have a walk, but there's no reason as to why she can't still enjoy herself.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? Like she's not
It
on a diet.
sounds so simple, but I think a lot of people, especially when they go into a prep, they just think like, "Oh, it's just all me now. I have to isolate myself and kind of go this own way because if anything intrudes my bubble, it's gonna fuck up."
And then like Beth had Beth done amazing at this, like for quite a bit of prep as well, was like when I'd get up and do my cardio in the morning, like she'd come and do a cardio with me.
Mhm.
Like we're not there talking for half an hour. We're there like either watching shit on our phone or we're just fucking going hell for leather doing our cardio. But we're there together. We're doing it together. It's a shared experience. Like it's not just I'm doing this, you're doing that. Talar, and I'll speak to you later.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, we spend a lot of time together as well, man. Yeah, I'm trying to think what else you might have a good idea actually on like what I did that made this prep like more enjoyable. I also think as well, mate, like a large part of it that I do want to touch on is like actually fatigue management and
Yep.
not feeling as though I'm actually dead on my arse in prep, which is like kudos to Dan.
Yeah.
In terms of like how he'd actually managed this prep for me, because at no point really was I had my days, but at no point was I like um
Zombie.
zombie mode. Yeah. Like it would be fleeting, but then we'd pull ourselves back up to the surface a little bit and freshen up, and then we'd go again. It wasn't like run me into the ground continuously, which then allows you to stay more kind of mentally kind of aware to what you're doing, where you are. Like even if it's like like maybe not because you haven't prepped, but you have done a diet, but towards the back end, like your ability to like social battery, it diminishes really fucking quick. Like even to the point where I just want to go sit upstairs. Like my grandparents might be round, but I literally just don't have the energy to sit and just be. Like even
Mhm.
if I'm not directly involved. Um, but this time round, because that social battery wasn't burnt and my fatigue management was handled so well, like just being in the environment with everyone and not being a recluse just means that your family, your friends, your partner, they don't lose you from that transition from your off season or your maintenance phase into your diet phase. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas if you're not here, you're out of sight, you're out of mind, you're distancing yourself, you're breaking that relationship down a little bit more each time you do that.
Mhm.
And this time around was just completely different, man. It was crazily enjoyable. Yeah, crazily enjoyable. And I was like 10 times more peeled than I was back in 2021. So
Yeah, your
I look
condition was mad. You were skinless.
I look back at 2021 and I was like, you weak little fucking bitch. You moan, you were dead. But to be fair, mate, I was still working, I was still surveying at that time, 2021. Um, and that prep was fucking hard because I was commuting like a 2 hour drive to work, working for 8, 9 hours, then 2 hour commute back. It was like 15,000 steps a day,
Yeah.
30 minutes of cardio a day. There was just long days. Like my days weren't finishing until like almost midnight each day.
Mhm.
Um, which again, you can make it fucking work, but it's gonna be that much
The
more.
higher stress levels are definitely going to burn you out more.
Absolutely, mate. Absolutely.
Right. How are we for time, mate? Because I don't want to keep you.
Carry on rolling, mate. Carry on
Okay.
rolling until the conversation burns out.
Okay. Banging. Don't worry. We will never get to that. I'm good at that. Um, in. Do you want to get onto some questions?
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right.
You got
Cool. Yeah. So Taylor said, "What a prick! Can't believe you've got Stella on and not me. Hurt." I saw that and I instantly messaged Taylor. Because I did want to have him on. It was just because I think me and you've been obviously I saw you in Muscle Works and it just kind of I was just like I spoke to you briefly and I was like I wanted to have you on. But Taylor, if you're listening, mate, I will definitely have you on because it would be good to reminisce about. It was funny actually. I was thinking about this the other day because when I worked with Taylor, I feel like he was the first coach for me where he kind of like instilled that kind of like athlete mindset in for me because I wasn't like similar to like you. I never grew up playing sports. So I was just like always that chubby kid, very shy, anxious, who never like kind of put himself out there. And then when I worked with Tom before Taylor, that was just like that was me kind of going from like gem pop to I actually like bodybuilding. But Taylor was like the stepping stone for me, where it was like, I mean, you know how it
You've
is.
got to eat out. You got to eat out of Tupperware 4 or 5 times a
Yeah,
day now, mate.
yeah, yeah. He was like getting me into shape, and he was like, right, you have to work here now. But yeah, I have you on Taylor. Someone said misconceptions with peak week protocols. I'm not going to speak on this because obviously I haven't prepped anyone or prepped, so I don't feel
Misconceptions with peak week protocol. So I think for the most part, um, this gets quite a bit of traction anyway, like what I'm about to say. But peak week, I think people expect like miracle work to happen.
Mhm.
Um, and peak week is like, oh, but my physique's going to do a complete 180 here. Peak week, like for me, is or anyone I was prepping and for myself is a period where like the work should have been done and wrapped up in terms of your your fat loss and your improvements towards condition, like 2.5 3 weeks prior to that point.
Mhm.
Yeah. Peak week should be for me like a period where your expenditure is pulled back to a point where you're doing pretty much no cardio, steps are pulled back to like a baseline point. um but in terms of misconceptions, I'd probably say that is the biggest misconception, that you're going to make up for lost time or loss of accounted time towards your fat loss, towards your improvements, towards condition, because it's not going to happen.
Mhm.
Um, and I think people think as well, like there's got to be this crazy adjustment in terms of like, right, I'm going to go from drinking 6 or 7 liters of water to then I'm going to drink like 2 drops of water a day, and it's just going to completely dry me out. Um, which is really not the case, man. But I would definitely say that's probably the biggest misconception. I
Mhm.
can't really think of misconceptions that come to mind for a peak week unless you can you can think of any in particular, but that's probably the biggest like
No,
peak.
I would say the same as you. Like people expect too much out of it. I mean, because obviously I haven't prepped anyone and I haven't prepped myself, but I've always the way I've heard about it is just like, you know, it basically is just like the cherry on top. It's not like, you know, you're changing a huge amount of, you know, variables that are gonna completely change everything. It's like if you've put in the work, this little thing we're gonna do here will help out.
Yeah.
But you know, if you fucked up, this isn't really gonna change anything.
So by the point of your actual peak, you would have hopefully had the opportunity, if you were in condition enough, that 3 to 3.5, maybe 4 weeks prior, to have run like
That's right.
multiple trial peaks as well. So you have a good idea as to what your setup for this actual peak is going to look like based off of your mocks.
Mhm.
Um, but peak week is like, it's an enjoyable time, man, because it's like you're within touching distance. Um, you should have been pulled back on your expenditure to start lessening fatigue by that point as well, in my opinion. If you're still doing cardio on peak week, like I've seen people still having to do like doing cardio on like show day morning, and I'm like, what on God's earth have you done with your timeline? Unless you've absolutely obliterated your prep with your level of adherence,
Mhm.
you shouldn't be having to do that. In my opinion, anyway. But yeah, it's a really enjoyable week. You're getting things sorted and finalized with maybe like your travel plans, accommodation, um, and just letting your physique come to life. You're gonna
Mhm.
have more, gonna have a little bit more food in your system, so you're gonna have more energy. You're gonna start to freshen up. You're gonna start to get really fucking excited for show weekend as well. And that's really when, for me, the excitement starts to build. Like when peak week starts, it's like, huh, like the work is actually done. We are here. We've made it to peak week.
You
Like a
see the finish
success.
line.
Yeah.
Banging. Um, someone else always also said, what do you weigh more in importance for bodybuilding, structure or muscularity? I'd say
Uh,
find balance.
muscular. Yeah, I'd probably say muscularity, because especially at an amateur level, um, if you've got someone that's got nice shape but is pretty underdeveloped in terms of their muscularity, muscle maturity, shape doesn't really account for a lot if you've got someone with a shit ton of muscle hanging off of their frame.
Mhm.
Um, you're probably looking at that strike of balance and muscularity as you start to progress through the amateur ranks into like the low level pro ranks. But for me personally, yeah, muscularity is always in bodybuilding anyway, will always kind of just edge shape and structure.
Mhm.
Um, but what you said is right. Like a status quo, a balance of the two is the money maker, right? No one wants to see a fucking
Bridge.
what people do, but especially nowadays, it's kind of not. I personally don't want to look like just a block. I'd like to have some kind of like shape to my physique, which I'm fairly lucky I do have. But
Mhm.
both are kind of going to be structure even more so predetermined by genetics, but muscularity again genetic, but you can kind of control that one a little bit more as well. But yeah, muscularity for me, I would say would weigh a little bit more. Because you could step on stage and have someone with fantastic structure, fantastic shape, but nowhere near as much muscle. And if you've got someone with okay shape and structure, but has an ungodly amount of tissue hanging off of their frame, well, at the end of the day, it's a muscularity competition, right? So
Yeah, no, 100% agree, mate. Last question I've got on my, well, it's not really a question, it's more of a statement. Someone said, even the back of a man's head is shredded. For fuck's
who
sake.
said that?
It's from my mate Zhao.
Oh, that's gold. I like that. And
Did you get any questions on your end?
yeah, I've got some. 2 secs. Let me pull them up. So I've got, what's your long-term goal with competing? Any trophies you want to win? Any trophies or accolades you want to win in particular? Um, so my long-term goal with competing is, and this sounds really kind of blasé as well, but I think it's really not naive, but it's not unrealistic when people set a goal within bodybuilding without like, I don't know what my physique's going to look like in the next off season. I don't know what improvements I'm actually going to make. I know what I want to make. I don't know what the goal is, but I don't know if that's actually going to happen, right? Because I can't control that. There are variables that are out of my control. I know I can work as hard as I can and I can apply myself. So my long-term goal with competing, for me to say, oh, I want to be on stage at this weight and I want to have this body part, this size, or whatever it may be. It's really fucking hard to say because I can't control
Yeah, you don't know how
how
it's going to play out.
do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So in terms like my long term goal with competing, for me, like my aspiration is like at the minute, I would really like to win I would really like a PCA like pro status. Um, and then from there, obviously, if I have the ability and we think it's there to dabble in like the NPC route with IFBB, then give it a crack. But honestly, my long term goal with competing is just, again, this sounds so like it's a real loser answer, but just to literally be as good as I can be as an amateur bodybuilder, and then
I,
whatever happens from there happens.
I think that's the best way, mate. I think it's better than having the like delusional thing of saying like, oh, I want to be like an Olympia athlete. Do you know what I mean? Because it's so
I need
like,
to be realistic as well, right? Like if I was if I knew I was gonna be an Olympia caliber athlete
hmm,
or a really top level pro, I would know that or have a really good understanding of that by now.
hmm,
If I was to pick up an IFBB Pro card, I know exactly what will happen. I'll pick up an IFBB Pro card, maybe by the skin of my ball bag, and I'd be a really low level NPC athlete that will be competing at pro shows and never come in, like top seven. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to be able to compete as a competitive athlete, which for me at the minute is like that PCA route,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
I don't want to just pick up an IFBB Pro card. And I think a lot of people do, especially when they're so young. Like you see, like these freaks that I've just picked. like gone to a regional, then a qualifier, regional, then a pro qualifier, and they've won a card, and it's like, great. Now what are you going to do? You're going to have to spend the next 4 or 5 years away from that competitive scene to try and bring about improvements to maybe make you somewhat of a competitive IFBB pro, which for me, like, I would much rather just win the card and then give it back and then go back to PCA just to say that I've won a pro card with IFBB and
Yeah,
then be
just
able
so you can
to,
slap it in your Instagram bio.
you know what I mean? Yeah. Been there, done that,
Yeah.
was an IFBB pro. Who has that in their status as well? Was IFBB pro.
Hmm.
But yeah, man.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
Um,
I'm just trying to think. I'm trying to think what I want to do for mine. Like, I think I'm like very early into this, and like I don't really count myself of having like a successful off season yet because I've always been, last year I didn't really have like the best relationship with my coach, and it kind of got to that point where I was just like, I don't know if I want to do it. So I bottled that off season halfway through, and now with Max, I feel like this is the first time I've kind of, I've done the diet phase where we've reversed out. My body's reacting well, and now I just kind of want to have a very good off season and then compete. And after that, see if I even enjoy the process of it. Because like, I'm not going to be one of these people who's going to be like, oh yeah, I want to, place here. I want to do this. I don't even know if I enjoy the stage. I don't even know if I enjoy prep.
that should, like, for where you are now, like, my piece of advice would be like, obviously you're going to have a really successful off season because you sound like you want it. Prep and the stage is something that is like right, should be right at the back of your head. That's like, okay, I think it's there. And when you do think about it, the success for you and anyone that is in a similar position should be like your pinnacle, your goal, your focus of stepping on stage. It should be that. It should be to have been able to successfully complete 20, 22, however many weeks worth of a really fucking hard process. And your success should be getting your tanned arse on that stage. That's it. Irrespective of 1, 2, 3, an invite to a final. If you've made it and had a really enjoyable experience alongside that, stepping on stage, that's it. That's all that should be the focus. That's all it should be to win. Not any of people like throw clout at people and try and drive up, like the smoke and whatnot, where it's like, oh, you're gonna absolutely smoke it, mate. Like, for a first time, I don't see many people like that are gonna be up there like that for you. And it's like, it's irrelevant, man, because you don't know who the fuck is going to turn up because not everyone that competes is on Instagram. You don't know everyone,
Mm.
right? So if you're going there and your only aspiration, the only want is to come one, we'll just say come first, you turn up and you've got this absolute fucking Russian, Polish freakazoid that's just turned up from nowhere and blows you out the water. Well, great. That 20, 22 weeks worth of prep is now for fuck all. So you've got no success from that diet at all, which would have been brutal. So stepping on stage, that is the win. That's it.
Yeah. Mm.
Anything else in terms of placing, that's a byproduct. That's a, oh, fucking happy days, I've got a gold medal, because that shit doesn't matter. It really don't. Your friends, your partner, if you're in a relationship, like, mate, they don't give a fuck whether you've come. Your followers on Instagram don't give a fuck as well whether you come first or you come sixth, right? Don't care whether you got a gold trophy or you got a shitty little brown one. Like, it's irrelevant. Next week, people have forgotten that you've even been on stage.
Mm.
Yeah. So it has no merit at all, in my opinion. Just fucking enjoy the process. Get yourself on stage, dance in a thong, and enjoy it. That is it. That
Yeah.
is it.
I'm very grateful to Max because he has instilled that in me. Like, I think early on that the reason why I kind of put so much pressure, like I kept failing, was because I had that pressure. But like he's said to me, just win every day, and over that period of time, if you keep doing that, you'll do well, and just
Like, what the
enjoy the
fuck, man?
process.
This is what I have this conversation with clients quite a lot, right? It's this whole process, whether you're in an off season, whether you're in a diet phase, whether you're in prep, like, it it should be an enjoyable experience. It shouldn't be a wake up every day with this massive like grey cloud over my head of like, oh God, like, oh, I've got this pressure. Like, what other hobby in the world do you do? Like, I'm thinking of like old boys that go and play golf. Do you think they wake up in the morning and go, oh God, I
Oh,
can't,
I
I've
got
got
18 holes this morning. Fuck.
worried about if I'm going to make this putt? It's like, no, like, you're not going to have that with any other hobby in the world. But because of how, I'm not going to say egotistical, but because of like what bodybuilding is, and it is judged on you, it's really artificial, or superficial. Um, that's kind of why we have these tendencies to put that pressure on ourselves, and we pull the enjoyment out of it. And it's like, no, bodybuilding should be fucking enjoyable, man. It is. It should be your lifestyle. Like, if I'm living my life is a lot of bodybuilding, right? It has to be. If I was waking up and it was causing, I was putting this pressure on me, do you think I'd fucking do it? I'll go and play golf. I'd go and play squash. Whatever the fuck I'd do, I'd make sure I was doing something that wasn't putting my mental health in a shit spot, and that's it.
Yeah. No,
Bodybuilding shouldn't be doing that.
yeah, I think some people just kind of forget that, and they just get so sucked up into like the social media of it and just like wanting to,
And,
know.
and you always find as well, just cutting you there, it's like it's always the athletes that are relatively new and young into it as well. Like the boys they experience, the older boys, like I'm talking like the Amph Bows and the people that have been around for fucking ages. Like, do you think back in the day they was going, oh, I've got this pressure to do this? Like, no, they was just fucking doing the do, eating the food, taking the drugs, training as they were training, and loving the fucking experience of it. That is it. That should be.
Because at the end of the day, like I always say, like, at the end of the day, you're doing it for a piece of plastic. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
if you
like
don't enjoy it,
my trophies are up there, but I can guarantee you, probably in about 3 weeks' time, they've come back down off of the shelf again, and they're back up with pictures of the dogs. Like they're gonna be gone.
yeah,
Like, yeah, I've got some cool pictures, but what's even more better is the fucking memory. And again,
exactly.
I'm coming out of all these cringy quotes today, but the things that I will remember is not going to be that big fucking metal sword I've got on the shelf, but it's going to be the memories of like the show weekend, which I spoke about on my story, which was
Mm.
like us chilling in the hotel room, and we're talking about things that have nothing to even do with bodybuilding, and
Yeah, just
we're
building relation. That's the thing I love about bodybuilding, and this is why I love doing the podcast. Is like because you meet people who have the passion and like the discipline of it, and actually wanting to show up every single day and be like 1% better every
yeah,
single day. That's what I love. Like
yeah,
it's not standing on stages makes up for like one
yeah,
0.1%.
yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
like, what's the point in focusing on just that part of it? It makes no
Yeah, like
sense.
I said at the beginning, it's like if the only time you're ever going to enjoy it is you think you being on stage, like, oh, what a sad little life, Jane. You're going to be miserable forever. Do you know what I mean? You're,
Yeah, no, it makes no sense. It's stupid, mate. Did you have any more questions?
yeah, I've got a couple, mate. 2 secs. I already answered that one really. Like, how different did you find the prep process this time around compared
Yeah,
to the first time? Um, uh, I've got outside of bodybuilding, what are some of your goals slash aspirations? Which is a cool one because I actually really fucking enjoy like not talking about bodybuilding.
yeah,
Um, and it also gives people a fucking opportunity like to realize that there is more to me than chicken and rice and
yeah,
masteron. Um, so goals, aspirations outside of bodybuilding. Start with like business first. I want to continue doing what I'm doing with my business, which is growing. I've got like a wicked team of mixed people in terms of like lifestyle clients and athletes and bodybuilders, which is really fucking cool, both male and female. So I want to continue to level up. I hate that saying. Continue to grow as a coach. Further my experience with that. Continue to deliver a good. I don't want to say service, but a good experience for people that whether they are a lifestyle client, whether they are an athlete, but continue to make it as non-miserable as possible, which is what it should be. It needs to just be an effortless, enjoyable fucking process, people. So that's what the business. I don't have like some guys will set like, I want X amount of clients.
Yep.
I genuinely couldn't give a fuck how many clients I have at the end, like at the end of each month, as long as as long as I have clients and I'm not skint.
Yeah,
But I don't ever set like myself targets to, you know, like 100 clients or anything like that, because that's just not me, man. I'm so like, in terms of like priority, my
building good relationships and actually having that value instead of just a
so
fucking
much more
number.
important to me than like financial, like as a business and being self-employed. Yeah, that is important. You need to remember that. But that's not like, I didn't leave surveying to go, I want to go into coaching because it's a really good money maker. If I wanted to make more money, I would still be surveying.
Yep.
Well, I wouldn't. I'm making more money now, but I could have stayed within surveying if it was monetary based. So yeah, just continue to progress as I am, and then away from bodybuilding, aspirations, like continue to be like as good as a fucking partner as I can. Continue to have a thriving relationship with Beth, which is absolutely everything, because without that, I don't really have much else. Like if I didn't have that, it would have a knock-on effect into my business. It'd have a knock-on effect into how efficient I am as a bodybuilder. And that's like the gospel truth. Like she drives a lot of it, to be honest. So to continue with that, man, I could keep going because I don't know how many years I'm supposed to go in advance. I don't want to start talking about children. I don't want to start talking about.
This is good, mate. This is good. I love when people actually like speak. Like the worst thing is when you have someone on, you ask them a question and they're just like,
Yeah,
yeah, I want to do this, and then it's that, and
yeah,
you're like, fuck.
yeah, like we're still a few years, still a good chunk of time away from it, but I want to have a family at some point. And like hopefully by that point, like I do like the idea of having children, or at least a child, whilst I'm still competing. Like, because I think it'd be really fucking cool to have like my child at a show, to been able to say like,
The most muscular in the playground.
I mean, yeah, literally, yeah, yeah. What's wrong with your dad? Oh, nothing. He's
Like,
he's
it's just like,
okay. Yeah. But yeah, I think that would be really cool.
Mhm.
Um, but I also want to be like, I want to be a really good fucking dad, man. Yeah, I want to be a really good dad. And I don't know what that looks like in terms of me being able to manage, being a good amateur bodybuilder alongside that. But I don't want to be a dad that's like unable to go and kick a football about with their kids, or, you know, get down on the floor and play with their kids without having a fucking aneurysm and shit like that.
I can't
So
play with you. Just on leg press. Sorry, mate.
you know what I mean? Yeah, I've got to wait
Yeah.
for my CNS. I'm for CNS. Not yet. Where's the ashwagandha? Um,
Can't pick up your baby because you got cleanse shakes.
you know, yeah, literally, yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's probably like goals, aspirations. Just continue. Like I love my life. I have a wicked fucking life. I have a wicked relationship. Have a really good business. So my goals, aspirations for the future are just to keep doing what I'm doing, because it hasn't steered me wrong, mate. So that would probably be that.
Banging, mate.
Yeah. I
I
want to
just,
know what your goals, aspirations are for the future.
yeah, no, like for me, it's just been like it's definitely like making coaching my job. I discussed this again quite a lot on the last podcast, but like I've we were talking about like doubt and like self-doubt as like a coach, and I think like because I'm quite early into it and like I didn't have a lot of kind of like social proof that I could actually do it. I feel like I'm currently like proving to myself that I'm kind of becoming this person, and like people are starting to see that now, and I'm getting more, you know, people coming to me and asking for help and advice, and you know, I just want to be able to, you know, put myself out there, develop the business, and like just show people kind of like what I'm about, and like I really want to do bits with the podcast. Like it's something I'm really passionate about, just like sitting down with like-minded individuals and, just I think for me as well, like becoming an athlete, I like even just this, just sitting with someone who's actually competed, like, getting knowledge from you is like something a lot of other athletes won't have. So like I cherish these moments where just where I can kind of like sit down, chat to someone, get advice, you know. Um, but yeah, develop the business, get to the point where I can leave my other jobs and just make this full time, move out. Yeah, that's as far as kind of I'm
Get
kind of seeing.
wham in the process.
Yeah, get wham, mate. Get a competition under my belt and like actually, not be in the 70s. Like that's terrible. I hate it. I feel like a little stick.
Talking about like what you said about like having the confidence to like whether you mean like to market yourself or to put
Mm,
yourself out there.
mm,
For me, like the biggest, if I could give like a golden nugget to anyone, it would be like you see my content. My content is shit. Like I don't invest as much as I should in my content, right? But for me, what has and what was the most important thing was showing people kind of like how much bodybuilding and the whole kind of area of physique enhancement, lifestyle betterment, how important that is to me, like, and how much that is my be all and end all. Like, I open my eyes, I think about it. I shut my eyes, I'm still thinking about it. Showing kind of like how submersed I actually am in it, if that makes sense. Like, it's not just something that I dabble in on a Monday to Thursday, and then from Friday to Sunday, I'm out on the razzle dazzle. Like, I live and breathe this shit.
yeah.
Um, so for people who are looking from the outside in, as you would, like, are you going to go to a hairdresser who, Monday to Friday he works in a butcher's, but Sundays he cuts hair? No, you're probably not going to do that. So someone that absolutely like lives and breathes it as a be all and end all is really, really important for people to see from the outside in.
Mm. Yeah, no, 100%. I feel like that's a perfect place to end it, mate, personally.
Yeah, man. I feel like we've been going for
It's like an hour and 10 minutes.
Jesus.
Yeah, it just flows. All right. Well, Billy, thank you for coming on, mate. I greatly appreciate it. For anyone watching, please tag us on Instagram if you do watch. Make sure to rate the podcast 5 stars, like and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And yeah,
What platform do you put it up on?
YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
Woo,
and yeah, all of them, mate. We're covered. Uh,
covering all bases,
yeah,
mate.
yeah, we've got to get all that interaction. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
catch you on the next one, guys. Thanks for coming on,
Sweet.
Billy.
Bye bye.
Peace.